Saints Row. What went wrong? This question is going to be asked a huge number of times for the rest of the year. How the hell do you have a series of games based on sandbox freedom, out-of-the-box humor, and Pandora's box weaponry, where every time you reached in, you had a new, different item that you were going to be able to get? How do you end up turning all of that into this? Why do you think it is? In this video, I'm going to give you the 3 main reasons why we are now looking at a Saints Row-less future from now on, and how a beautiful and fun mess turned into just a mess. Subscribe if you like these kind of videos, and check out the reviews. 3 reasons. Number 1, technical problems. Saints Row is a mess. Perhaps not the almost hilarious breaking point that we saw in Cyberpunk's original release, but it's also not trying to do what Cyberpunk was aiming to do. It doesn't have as many systems, as in-depth attempt at RPG elements, nor an interesting story, really, at all. But the problems remain here. Videos already cropping up of the crippling amount of bugs and gameplay issues. My own issues, including guns facing the wrong way in battle for the entire fight, not being able to shoot at all, are just some of the issues that you'll run into. Thank God he couldn't, otherwise he would have shot his own damn face off. How does all this happen? Saints Row has always been a game that played fast and loose with the open world nature of these kind of titles. Sometimes the bugs were visible, but it's almost impossible to explain what's going on here, because when you look at the old games, you realize a massive amount of that out-of-control chaos that existed in the original titles isn't here, yet this makes it appear like Gat out of hell is a prophecy. You have AI that spawns inside buildings or on the freeways, above mission areas, in the water. You have cars and helicopters and people just transforming into one another, shadows flickering in and out, and pop-in that would get its own channel demonetized if it could upload itself to YouTube as false news. These aren't completely unknown for even the best of games out there. Elden Ring had its own issues, so too did Horizon Forbidden West and Dying Light 2. But what's stunning about Saints Row's issues are the technical problems in relation to the other 2 I'm going to go on to now. Number 2. Saints Row seems like it's almost an attempt to explain to the gamers what they liked is bad now. Now, stick with me. This is a woke, anti-woke kind of thing. I talked about this in the review. The developers' continued discussions about sexual innuendo and all the things that they wanted to get away from seemed like the developers themselves didn't understand that the undercurrent of their being uncomfortable wasn't the only part of what Saints Row fans actually enjoyed. And yet when they removed one part, they forgot to fill it with something interesting. In the old games, there were trucks. You could spew sewage out of sewage wagons, making enemies slip and slide around. There were moments of hilarity, singing along with the songs as a zombie, being a super agent, or in the Matrix. Hell, even Gat Out of Hell attempted something completely different. Each title building upon the other, and when you decide that you're going to reboot, you have to identify exactly where you're aiming. The problem here is that where everybody else was aiming down a particular track, these guys were on a completely different range. And I think you can see a lot of examples here. Saints Row had an entire game with the character's name in the title, Gat. That goes a long way in telling you exactly what fans may have liked about the series. But it's nowhere here in the game because there's no personalization. And customization, it's one of the things that everybody wants for a main character. It's wanted, needed, loved, and they gave us that. Even a lot of people, if you played the default male model Shepard in Mass Effect, you always knew that there were some of us out there playing Commander Creepy Pants Skeletor-looking dude, leading the crew of the Normandy into weapons fire of the enemies so ugly that a lot of people probably were hoping our characters would be put out of their misery. The reason this worked is because Shepard was one piece of the puzzle. The other was the characters. This is the same way that Saints Row worked. Ones that you loved or hated. Gat or Julius, Troy, Dex, Lynn, each one had a spot, and even if that spot was smaller than the others, they were known for something. The straight man sticks out in a group of fools. So even Dex, who was the voice of reason, was interesting because he was just that. But this version of Saints Row, it's completely lost. They think putting a waffle tattoo on a character makes them unique or noteworthy, that having a second in command that dresses like a leprechaun but also has great math skills is somehow a character worth even learning about. Saints Row was personality that was based upon the out-of-the-way and out-of-the-brain pan kind of style characters, as well as out-of-your-mind antics. That is what gave it that unique imprint that at times was going directly up against the big blockbusters of the time, including GTA. But the big problem with number 3 is there is no sense of focus. Saints Row didn't seem to understand that you can grab 40 ingredients and you can throw them into a bowl. Each may taste good on its own, but only a friggin' homicidal maniac would just mix horseradish and lemon concentrate and drink it. Separate ingredients in games come together to add texture at different times, like that crunch on the outside of a candy bar only to have caramel inside. It's how they layer across one another that creates the difference between something good and something that's just a melted mess. Even though they do try at times, Saints Row never seems to get it right because they don't set anything into any one position and sort of concrete it there. You do amazing missions with one character, but after that, you really don't mention it again or take any advantage of it. Characters don't talk amongst themselves one-on-one afterwards or have any real engagement. The story rarely brings any of that up. Hell, the story rarely brings anything up. You get cool skills, but it's hard to even tell where they're coming from or why they're even there. There's not even a joke about it. Sometimes you can lie a little to tell a lot, but Saints Row doesn't do that. And I think some of those abilities are hilarious, but it doesn't really fit together. You get abilities that aren't really used in the sandbox sense either. Like every single thing that they added, they wanted to control so much that they didn't know where to let you use it. Even the grapple, which lets you tear around the world with other vehicles or items dragged behind you, seems like it was because they watched Fast and Furious one time, but then like bowling with bumpers at night, they wanted to make sure it wasn't used too much or that in any way that could really change the world and create that over-the-top anarchy. Even the introduction to flying vehicles, like the helicopter, is handled in the weirdest way possible, with a random guy just giving you a job to fly, no one caring, nobody talking about any experience with any of your characters having even an over-the-top action kind of sensibility. But you may think to yourself, that doesn't really matter until you take off and you only have to fly like 400 feet to get to the actual mission area, and then you turn right back around, easily within sight of everybody, even though it's supposed to be somewhat of a stealth mission. Saints Row's failure to commit to almost anything isn't just sad from that perspective of a time of the year when not much is coming out. I don't care about that as much, nor do I suggest that people get this just because nothing is coming out. That's like rewarding a volleyball tournament first place award to the ref because the two teams couldn't get there because their buses crashed. It really is sad that this has probably single-handedly destroyed any chance, any iota of possibility of getting the game series to move forward. But the biggest misstep is that the game feels like its entire reasoning for being here was to tell gamers what you should like versus looking at the past titles and seeing their success would suggest that you like. And then in some warped desire to push that on you, they forgot to actually do the new elements correctly. Saints Row used to be a game that poked fun at the world, but even better at other games in its genre like GTA. And I can see wanting to slightly change those for today's current events. It's just like satire. You do want to have your satire at least be somewhat modernized. Now, though, I can envision other games coming along teasing the making of this game, laughing at people thinking that a ton of time spent on waffle jokes would somehow be funny or awesome. What's worrisome is even without these changes and ignoring the woke, anti-woke kind of back and forth that really does no one any good, I don't know if they had gone to try to do a Saints Row that was even in somewhat the same vein, we would have got a good game, because despite the last two issues, this game still does fall down in the one particular place that would have impacted it even if every single element was spectacular, and that's technically, because this thing is pretty rough. Still, it's a title that if you can get it on a deep sale, you might want to, but man, just really sad when you look at this and what it may have suddenly done to the Saints Row franchise. So I'd like to know what you guys think about these reasons, especially after you play it, what you guys think of gaming as it is now. What games are you interested in? If you get a chance, thumbs up this, subscribe, and of course, join up on the Patreon if you want to play some D&D, hang out with some friends, listen to some music, or talk video games. Thanks for subscribing, doing all that, because you guys keep the channel going. Peace out, and I hope you guys have an awesome week. Oh, stay tuned for new videos.